Okay, guys, so this is a bit of a quick review on powers of 10, especially negative powers of 10. So what I want us to do is, let's look at this really quickly. So if you noticed in the first one, we have 10 to the negative 3. Anything with a negative exponent, it has to be turned into a fraction to make it okay. So we would write 1 over 10, and we're going to turn it positive, to the third power. Okay? So then after that, we have to ask ourselves, okay, how many times are we multiplying this fraction? Well, what does our exponent say? Exponent says we are multiplying it 3 times. So we take that fraction and we're going to multiply it 3 times. So I got 1, 2, and 3. Okay. And now the next thing we want to know is, what is the fraction value? So we just say 1 times 1 times 1 is 1. And then we say 10 times 10 times 10. Now there is a pattern. I can write a 1, and then I'm going to write 3 zeros. Okay. Now, the next thing is looking at the decimal value of 10 to the negative 3. So we write it as 0 point. How many spaces do we need after the decimal? We need 3. 1, 2, 3. Okay? And so this is how we express 10 to the negative 3 as a power of 10. Okay? As a negative exponent. All right, so the next thing we're going to do, and we're going to go and we're going to check Desmos just to see how well we did. Okay, so we're going to log into Desmos. All right, now we can type in 10 and then we can do negative 3. Now if you notice, it's only going to give us the decimal value. Okay, and we have that correct. So we have this here, 3 places after the decimal point. All right, the next thing we could do is we could type in 1, and we could do 10 to the third power. So we can still verify that. The next thing we could do is you could even type in the values to multiply the fractions. 1 over 10, we're going to multiply that fraction again, 1 over 10. We're going to multiply that fraction again, 1 over 10. If you notice, anything that we're trying, the decimal value is going to match. Okay? And then we could even type in 1 over 1,000. If you notice, all of these match, which means that they are matches for 10 to the negative 3. So use Desmos to your advantage. Okay? All right, let's go back. Now, the next one we're looking at is we're going to look at 10 to the negative 7. All right, their same patterns apply. So what we're going to do, all right, 10 to the negative 7, this is a negative exponent, which means 1 over 10 to the 7th power. Okay, now how many times are we going to multiply our fraction? We're going to multiply it 7 times. So it would be 1 over 10 times 1 over 10 times 1 over 10 times 1 over 10 times 1 over 10. And I've got 2 more to do. Okay. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and I'm going to put the 7th one down here, 1 over 10. So this fraction is being multiplied 7 times, okay? Now, the fractional value, okay? We have to multiply that 1 7 times, which is 1. Then we draw our fractional line, and then we say, okay, how many zeros should we have? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. So I'm going to make 7 zeros. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Okay? And all I'm doing is just going through and putting commas here. You don't have to put them there if you don't want them. Okay, so this matches. Now let's do the decimal. How many places after the decimal do we need? 7. Okay, so we're going to put our 0, and then we're going to count. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Okay, so this matches. Now, with problems like this, all right, I'm going to show you that Desmos is not always going to give you that decimal value, but we can try it. So if I go into Desmos, I'm going to clear that out, and I type in 10 to the negative 7. If you notice, it gives me an answer in scientific notation. Even if I were to type 1 divided by 10 to the 7th power, it is still going to give me that. So you have to know the patterns, okay? You got to know the patterns. All right, let's keep going. All right, so now we're going to go ahead and look at scientific notation. This is just a quick review. All right, so it tells us to write 678,000 in scientific notation. And if you remember, when we write numbers in scientific notation, what we're wanting to do is it has to be multiplied by 10 to the something power. In order to do that, because this is a large number and there's no decimal, you start at the back and you go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Okay, so the decimal point goes in between the 6 and the 7. So now we could write this number as 6.78 times 10 to the 5th power, because that's how many times we move the decimal. If I wanted to check myself, okay, I could go into Desmos and type 6.78. We're going to do times 10 to the 5th power. Okay, do you see that those numbers match? All right, so that's one way to check yourself. Now, if you are starting with, okay, a decimal, and it's asking us to write it in scientific notation, if you start with a decimal, then that means your answer is going to be negative. So we're going to do the same thing. We're going to move that decimal place after we write our information. So we're going to move our decimal 1, 2, 3 times. We're going to put it in between the 4 and the 7. So we write 4.7 times 10 to the negative 3. Okay, and we can go into Desmos and check our work. 4.7 times 10 to the negative 3. Okay, there's a match. All right, so now let's look at comparing these numbers. Now, I don't know if you remember the last time we talked about this, but when we talked about this, we always looked at the exponent. When we are comparing numbers written in scientific notation, it's asking us, is a number greater than, or is a number less than, or is it equal to? All right, so both of these answers you can type into Desmos, or you can look at the exponent. So this exponent is 4, and this one is 5. Which one is larger, the 4 or the 5? If you said the 5, you're absolutely correct. Now, when we write this, we have to say that the 4 is less than 5, okay? And that's all we have to do, okay? So let's look at the next one. Now we're talking about negative numbers. So when we circle that exponent, we're looking at our negative numbers. You have to think about the number line, okay? Which number comes first? Which number is closest to 0 on the number line? If you said negative 3, you are correct. So that means that negative 5 is less than negative 3. Okay? When we scroll down and look at the very last one, okay, so we're looking at the very last problem. We are looking at a negative 2 and a negative 2. So when we're looking at these, the next thing that we have to look at that's very, very important is you go to this number, you go to the beginning numbers, and you say, okay, which one is the biggest? All right, 5.6 is bigger than 4.4. So that means we've got less than. Okay, so go ahead and do your practice. I hope this helps.